Welcome back! Today I'm standing in front of the Great Pyramids in Egypt to reveal 8 secrets that will completely change how you see this ancient civilization. Forget what you learned in history class. These are mind-blowing truths buried for thousands of years. We captured every shot ourselves, no stock footage, just real high-definition footage from Egypt. Get ready, because the first fact alone will make you question everything you thought you knew about the pyramids. Let's dive in. Here's secret number 1. Look at the Great Pyramid behind me. Most people see a massive ancient structure weathered by time and sand. But what if I told you that what you see today is just a shadow of its former glory? Most people picture these rough, sand-colored stones, huge blocks stacked in a jagged, step-like pattern. It's easy to imagine the pyramid always looked this way, but that's not the real story. For thousands of years, the pyramids were actually covered in polished white limestone. These stones were cut and finished so precisely that the surface was smooth as glass, gleaming in the desert sun. Imagine a structure so bright it could be seen from miles away, almost like a beacon, calling out across the sands. The limestone blocks fit together so perfectly you couldn't even slide a knife blade between them. This created a seamless, dazzling surface that reflected sunlight with incredible intensity. The effect was so stunning that ancient travelers described the pyramids as blindingly brilliant, almost impossible to look at directly. In the harsh Egyptian sun, these pyramids would have shone like colossal diamonds, their surfaces sparkling and glowing. Some historians believe they were the brightest man-made objects on Earth at the time, visible from far across the Nile and even from distant hills. They weren't just tombs, they were symbols of power and divinity. The gleaming white surface reflected the sun's rays, connecting the pharaoh to Ra, the sun god, and making the pyramid a literal mountain of light. To the ancient Egyptians, this was a sign of the pharaoh's godlike status and eternal life. Over the centuries, earthquakes shook the region, knocking the limestone casing loose. Later, as Cairo grew, builders stripped away the precious stones to use in mosques, palaces, and other buildings. The once glittering pyramids were slowly robbed of their outer skin, leaving only the rough core behind. What we see today is just the core, the skeleton of what once was. The jagged, weathered blocks are only the inner structure, never meant to be seen by human eyes. Next time you see the pyramids, try to imagine them as they once were, smooth, white, and shining so brightly they'd hurt your eyes. The difference is almost unimaginable. A transformation from a pile of stones to a blinding monument of light. The real spectacle has been lost to time, faded away by centuries of earthquakes, looting, and erosion. The pyramids we see now are just a memory of their true magnificence. The ancient Egyptians didn't just build a pile of stones, they created a mountain of light, a monument that captured the power of the sun and the imagination of the world. That's 1,000 times more epic than what we see today. The true pyramids were wonders of engineering, art, and symbolism, unmatched by anything else in the ancient world. It completely changes how we picture ancient Egypt. Instead of dusty ruins, imagine a civilization that built shining monuments to eternity, structures that literally lit up the landscape. And that's just one of the secrets hidden in plain sight. On to the next secret. Fact 2. Paper. It's something we use every day, often without a second thought. But imagine a world before it existed, a world where every message, every law, and every story had to be carved into stone or pressed into heavy clay. Writing was a slow, painstaking process, reserved for only the most important information. Before Egypt, writing meant carving into stone or pressing clay. These methods were durable, but they were also bulky, heavy, and incredibly time-consuming. Transporting information was a challenge, and only a select few could read or write. Then, the Egyptians had a breakthrough. They invented papyrus using a river plant to create the world's first lightweight, portable writing surface. This was revolutionary. Suddenly, writing could be done quickly, and documents could be carried far and wide. The process was ingenious. They sliced the papyrus stalk, layered the strips in a crisscross pattern, pressed them together, and let them dry in the sun. The result was a smooth, flexible sheet, perfect for writing, drawing, and record-keeping. Suddenly information could travel. Laws, stories, medical texts, and letters could be rolled up and sent across the kingdom. Papyrus scrolls made it possible for ideas to move faster than ever before, connecting people and places in ways that had never been possible. Papyrus made record-keeping manageable and allowed libraries to flourish, like the legendary Library of Alexandria. Imagine shelves upon shelves filled with scrolls, knowledge from across the ancient world, all in one place. Thousands of papyrus scrolls have survived, giving us a window into daily Egyptian life. We can read their stories, their laws, their dreams, and even their shopping lists, preserved for thousands of years. This invention sped up communication and preserved knowledge for millennia. It was the foundation for education, science, and government, and it inspired future civilizations to develop their own forms of paper. Every time you use paper, you're using a technology perfected here over 4,500 years ago. From books to newspapers to notebooks, it all traces back to the banks of the Nile. Papyrus changed the world, and it all started on the banks of the Nile. Its impact is still felt today in every page we turn and every note we write. Let's move to the next mind-bending fact. Ancient Egyptians didn't just love their pets, they wanted them in the afterlife. Pharaohs and ordinary people alike mummified dogs, cats, monkeys, and even gazelles, burying them with honor. We visited a tomb with thousands of animal mummies, some in custom coffins wrapped in fine linen, even buried with food bowls and toys. Egyptians believed animals had souls and would join them in eternity. Some pets, like a royal dog named Abuchu, received grand burials with incense and fine wrappings. There was also a massive industry for mummified animals as offerings to the gods. But the bond between humans and pets was real and ancient. The love for a good pet is eternal, no matter the era. On to the next secret. Think Egyptian gods are just Ra, Anubis, and Isis? Think again. The Egyptians worshipped over 2,000 gods and goddesses. Every city, every aspect of life had its own deity. There was a god for childbirth, a goddess for beer, and even a dwarf god to scare away evil spirits. Gods could merge, change forms, and their roles shifted constantly. Religion was woven into every action, from planting crops to brewing beer. Priests managed this complex system, holding immense power as intermediaries. Temples weren't just buildings, they were machines to appease thousands of divine forces. Forget the simple animal-headed gods. Egyptian religion was sprawling, ever-changing, and deeply imaginative. Their pantheon was one of the most complex in history. Let's keep going. Here's a fact that will absolutely break your brain. Cleopatra, the legendary last pharaoh of Egypt, actually lived closer in time to the invention of the iPhone than she did to the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It sounds impossible, but the numbers don't lie. Most people imagine Cleopatra walking among the freshly built pyramids, but in reality, she was separated from their construction by thousands of years. The Great Pyramid was completed around 2560 BC, towering over the desert sands as a marvel of ancient engineering. Cleopatra, on the other hand, lived around 30 BC, at the very end of Egypt's dynastic era. That's a staggering gap of about 2,500 years between the pyramid's construction and Cleopatra's reign. To put it in perspective, the first iPhone was released in 2007, just over 2,000 years after Cleopatra's death. For Cleopatra, the pyramids were already ancient ruins, shrouded in mystery and legend, just as they are for us today. Egyptian civilization itself lasted nearly 3,000 years, an almost unimaginable span of time, outlasting the Roman Empire, Christianity, and even the rise and fall of many Chinese dynasties. Over those millennia, dynasties rose and fell, gods and traditions changed, capitals shifted from Memphis to Thebes to Alexandria, and Egypt was conquered and reborn again and again. By Cleopatra's time, the stories of the pyramid builders were already ancient legends, and she would have learned about them from old scrolls and temple carvings, much like we do from history books today. So when you think of ancient Egypt, remember, it's a civilization so old, even its own rulers saw its greatest monuments as relics of a distant past. That's truly mind-bending. Ancient Egyptians weren't just advanced, they were medical pioneers. Medical papyri like the Edwin Smith papyrus describe real surgical procedures, not magic. They performed brain surgery, trepanation, on skull fractures, and some patients survived. They were skilled dentists, drilling teeth and even making dental bridges with gold wire. Mummification gave them deep anatomical knowledge. They used honey as an antibiotic and willow bark for pain, centuries before modern medicine. Their medicine mixed science and magic, but their clinical skills were unmatched for their time. Egyptians were the world's first clinical scientists, performing surgeries and using natural antibiotics thousands of years ago. Let's move on. The Great Sphinx. Iconic, mysterious, and possibly much older than you think. The official story says it was built by Pharaoh Khafre around 2500 BC. But some geologists argue the Sphinx shows signs of water erosion, not just wind and sand. This kind of erosion would require heavy rainfall, something Egypt hasn't seen since before 5000 BC. If true, the Sphinx could be 7,000 to 10,000 years old, built by a lost civilization. The head is much smaller than the body, suggesting it was recarved from an older lion statue. Mainstream archaeologists reject this, but the debate rages on. Is the Sphinx a relic from a forgotten chapter of human history? The answer is still buried in the sand. On to our final secret. Ancient Egyptian eye makeup wasn't just for looks, it was high-tech protection. Both men and women lined their eyes with black coal, made from lead-based minerals. The makeup reduced sun glare, acting like the world's first sunglasses. But it also had medical benefits. The lead compound stimulated the immune system, helping prevent eye infections. In a land of bright sun and bacteria-filled floods, this was crucial. The makeup also had spiritual meaning, invoking the protective power of the god Horus. Egyptian makeup was fashion, science, and magic all in one, a daily survival tool. Let's wrap up. There you have it, 8 secrets that shatter everything you thought you knew about ancient Egypt. From shining pyramids to medical makeup, this civilization was more advanced and mysterious than we ever imagined. Which fact blew your mind? Let us know in the comments. If you want more mind-blowing history, subscribe and stay tuned for our next adventure. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.